Hey, so welcome everyone. My name is Kathy Markov, and I'm so happy to be here today and to be sharing a presentation by the Santa Barbara County America's Job Center of California. So this training, this workshop is being recorded, and it will be uploaded to the YouTube channel for America's Job Center for the County of Santa Barbara. So I just want to make sure we've got a bunch of people on the line. Can you see the slide? We can get some thumbs up.
Yes, we can see.
People in the chat, yay! Tried to give a thumbs up, but it wasn't an option. Whoops, I know, sometimes they change things around. There's a new version of Zoom, so be sure you have that. Well, let's get started. The one thing I need to do, I do need to pull up the participants in case we have any latecomers. But today we're going to talk about something that I think is really fun and very interesting and ever-changing. We're going to talk about generations at work. So working with all generations. And the funny thing, and I'll make this point later, you know, we could have been talking about this 30 years ago. It's just the dynamics kind of change. So this is one of those very important perspectives to be aware of ourselves, and to be able to work with all people. So here we go. This is what the goal really is that you are able to work effectively with all generations. We're talking a lot about diversity, equity, inclusion. I actually talked with someone who called it Jedi training, justice, equality, diversity and inclusion. So Jedi training, you know, this is like a big deal now. And we cannot forget that age is also a form of diversity, right? So it's not all about ethnicity and race. It is also about honoring diversity in terms of age, regardless of other aspects of our visible or invisible difference. So by understanding and learning to respect different generations, we're really in line with our ability to honor diversity. It also allows us to work effectively with everyone. So this is a skill that will serve you your entire career. Now, again, the specifics and the context may change a little bit as generations move out and others move in, but the perspective of understanding that, hey, generation is a big deal is really important. So I'm going to do something with you. I'm going to have us play a little trivia quiz to see how good you are at generations. And so this is what I want you to do. A couple things. Everyone pull up your chat. We'll use it later, not now. Don't use your chat right now. I hear someone asking have a question. Oh, hi, someone I think has joined us. But pull out a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil. And what I want you to do for this little quiz is I want you to just, again, piece of paper, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm going to ask you 12 questions. Now I want you to write down the first thing that comes to mind when I say this, okay? So there are right answers, but don't worry about that. I just want you to write down the first thing that comes to your mind, okay? So here we go. Ooh, we've got Dixie in the waiting room. Hi, Dixie, welcome. Join us. We have to get out a piece of paper, number it to 12, and here's our generational quiz. So here we go. And again, I want you to write down the first thing that comes to your mind. Don't try to edit yourself, and don't put anything in the task, and don't say anything until we're done. So here's the first question. What artist sings the hit single Sexy Back? It's going to give you like 5 seconds for each question. First thing that comes to your mind. Number 2, name 3 actors or actresses that were in the 1985 movie The Breakfast Club. Next, who was Jeremiah? Again, first thing that comes to your mind. What is the name of the video game that uses a guitar-based controller? She sings Single Ladies. Name the 6 characters on the TV show Friends. Take a deep breath, get that oxygen in your head. I'll bet you can get this one. Okay, the next question. What do the following mean in text language? Whoops. So it's LOL. That's one. Another one is BRB. IDK. What do those mean? Next one. When you hear the number 45, 33, and 78, what comes to mind? Or 45s, 33s, and 78s, what comes to mind? What does G and What's Up G stand for? He sings Blinding Lights. How long was the Minnows tour supposed to be? They sang Walk Like an Egyptian. Okay, so this is our generational trivial quiz. This is what I want you to do. I want you to make sure that you can talk, your mic is on, and also your chat, we can chat, and so some of these we might want to start singing. So let's see, okay? So I want to know, what artist sings Sexy Back? Who is it?
Don't know.
You don't know? I want my sexy back. Don't you know who that is?
Justin Timberlake.
Justin Timberlake. Very good. Okay.
I was like Britney Spears.
Yeah, no. Name 3 actors or actresses that were in the 1985 movie The Breakfast Club.
Molly Ringwald.
Molly Ringwald was one. Who else?
Emilio Estevez.
Emilio
Yes,
Estevez.
Emilio Estevez.
And McCarthy.
Who's that? You have to say their name.
Oh, Dixie Love. Sorry.
No, I think Judd or something.
Oh, yeah, Judd Nelson.
Yes.
So here they are, Molly Ringwald, Emilio Estevez, Judd Nelson, Ali Sheedy. Remember her? She was like a big deal, and then she just disappeared. Anthony Michael Hall. What happened to these guys? I don't know. Every once in a while, you'll see Molly Greenwald rock down a red carpet. But remember how big that movie was? If You Were Alive. Okay. I'm sorry, my computer is very slow today. Who was Jeremiah?
Bullfrog.
Jeremiah was a bullfrog. Remember that? Yeah. And a lot of people don't know that. What's the name of the video game that uses a guitar-based controller?
Guitar Hero.
Hero, yeah.
That's right.
Guitar Hero. Okay, now everybody has to get this one. Who sings Single Ladies?
Beyonce.
Yeah, I think hopefully we all get that one. I think my 87-year-old mother-in-law would know that one. Okay. Name the 6 characters on the TV show Friends.
Rachel, Joey, Monica, Phoebe, Chandler, Ross.
Oh, I
Wow.
forgot Monica and Ross.
I was a huge fan.
You're right about that. I mean, this show, people would it was different, right? You would plan your life around, every Friday night at whatever, or Thursday night at 8, it's going to be Friends. And, if you were lucky enough to have a TiVo or some way to record it, but if not, you'd make sure you were home to watch it. Things have changed. I can watch clips of it on my phone now, but it didn't used to be that way. Okay, I gave you the wrong one. So right now, what does LOL stand for?
Laugh out loud.
Yes, it does not mean what?
Lots of love.
Yeah. How many people have made that mistake? I always thought it was lots of love, right? And there's all sorts of funny jokes about people. Oh, your dog died, LOL, It's not lots of love, it's laugh out loud. And I didn't say G to G. I said BRB. What does that mean? That's a new one for me.
Be
Be
right
right
back.
back.
Be right back. IDK.
I
I don't know.
I don't know. What's G to G? This is an extra bonus here for you.
Gotta go.
Yeah, gotta go. Or when you're with your girlfriends, we're going out, we're gonna be girl to girl.
Oh.
I think that's a friendly thing. I think it
Never
does
knew
mean
that.
friendly. When you hear the numbers 45, 33, and 78, what comes to
Records.
mind? Yeah, records. Now, what's interesting about this, they're having a comeback, right?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay, what does G and what's up G stand for?
I said original.
Oh, okay. What
Yeah.
else? Oh, Jessica got it right. Gangsta, right?
Gangsta.
Now, I had a bunch
Gangsta.
of people in a group that I did. I had 80 people. Of that group, there were about
Funny.
12 people who were not either millennials or Gen Zs. It was a very young workforce. And they had all sorts of ways. Gangster, gangsta. We had a big, long talk, gangster, gangsta. I don't know. But that's not up for debate, but it's something like that. Okay, who sings Blinding Lights?
Don't know.
No clue.
I saw him with my daughter at the Santa Barbara Bowl maybe 4 years ago.
Justin Timberlake?
No, but he became very, very famous. He's
John
done
Legend?
Bieber?
No,
Justin
young
Bieber?
guy. No,
The
The Weeknd.
Oh, The Weeknd.
The Weeknd.
Jessica knew that. Type that in there. Jessica knew that too.
Yeah, The Weeknd. Okay, now we'll really date ourselves. How long was the Minnows tour supposed to be?
3 hours.
3
A
hours.
3-hour tour, right? It was Gilligan's Island. And I know that my kids have no idea what that is. But I also know that when I was a kid, it was in reruns. I didn't see them come out, right? But we'd run home from school to watch Gilligan's Island and I Love Lucy and the Flintstones, all those things that were repeating themselves. And we all knew 3-hour tour. Okay. Who sang Walk Like an Egyptian?
The Bangles.
Bengals.
The Bengals, yay! Right? Walk like an Egyptian. Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. This was sort of a fun way. Thank you all. Give yourself a hand. Whatever you did great. This was not really a test of your knowledge, but it was to just prompt us as a group to kind of consider the different things that we know and the different things that we don't know. And maybe ask the question like, why is that? So look at how you did. And I would guess that nobody got them all correct. And the point of this exercise is not to get a high score, but to point out that we all have different experiences that shape what we know and how we experience the world around us and how we interact. So this has a lot to do with the importance of perspective. Now, this is another dated thing. This is Gary Larson, The Far Side. He stopped producing cartoons, I don't know, 20 years ago, but he cracks me up. He's so funny. And he says here, good heavens, Pablo, an F in art. Well, I'm just going to have to go down to that school myself and meet this teacher face to face, right? So why do you think, he got an F? Because he's drawing faces with eyes all over the place and noses on the side of the face. Why? This is Pablo Picasso, right? So if you look at his art, it's not a symmetrical face, but it has to do with perspective. Look where he lives, look at his family. So this is really important, because what you see depends not only on what you look at, but where you look from. Right? Perspective is built on experience. And when we're talking about generations, right, experience comes into it. Now, when I say experience, I don't want to imply like, oh, I've been alive, I'm 57 years old, I've got all this experience, it's really valuable. I want to be honest, some of my experience isn't relevant anymore, right? I know how to do word perfect, big deal. No one cares about that anymore. If anybody's still working on a computer with word perfect, that's too bad. I can use a dial phone, not that important a skill anymore, right? So we need to really understand that we're all coming at this with different experiences, and we're looking at different situations differently as a result. So generations are a group of people with a shared history, core beliefs, common biases. And as a result of these events and conditions, each generation has adopted its own generational personality. Now, where do these generations come from? This is really, marketers love this because they're looking for demographic groups that they can target for certain types of products, ideas, information, so they can influence us, right? In some ways, it is a made-up construct. And we'll talk about this later, because I want to describe to you the 5 different generations that the experts say are in the workplace now. But as I describe them, you're going to fit somewhere because it has to do with your birthday. But you might be thinking, well, that's not really me. I'll talk about that later. Hang with me, right? Because what we want to do, it's like we're talking about working types. Those of you that were on my working type workshop, working with all types, right? No one is purely one thing. But by exploring that, it gives us some clues on how to better work with others. Right? We're looking for clues. Right? They say that once you get an idea of the person, then things start to shed light on them. So generations are one of those, I would like to say, they're not quite invisible. I mean, you can look at me and I've got wrinkles all over and you know that I'm, older. But when you get to know someone, lots of times that distinction can go away, and we can make some assumptions about we're working well together. We have good rapport. So of course we make assumptions about how people are. We want to overcome that and remember the impact of generations. So, I will tell you my perspective too, I've been taught this forever, is making, there were the traditionalists, and then the baby boomers, and then the Gen X people, right? And then along came our millennials, and I was seeing all this difference. But for me, like millennials and Gen Zs, they kind of all were the same until I did this training that I just told you about. And it was so interesting because, 75%, 80% of the people in the room were either millennials or Gen Zs. And they thought this was so impactful and important to make this distinction. So these generational perspectives play a role in how we communicate, in how we work with one another, in how we want people to interact with us. So if we're aiming at what I call, the platinum rule, do unto others as they would have me do unto them, and I talk a lot about that in my teaching, then we need to understand the generational differences in perspective. So this is what we're going to talk about. Now, I have to say this because every time I talk about this, I feel and get comments about millennials, from people who are not millennials, right? There's been a lot said about millennials, the me generation. I want to put a disclaimer out there for everybody who is a millennial or thinks about millennials, right? I don't want anyone to feel picked upon because of any negative things that have been said, okay? I showed this really interesting Time magazine, the me generation. Look at this. This is not now, right? I mean, this is 2013, okay? But this is not the only time that there have been magazine covers like that. Look at this, right? The 2013 was talking about millennials, but let's go back to 1976, the me decade. Who are they talking about? The baby boomers. And if you go back, they're talking about Gen X, the 20-somethings. This is just something I think that happens. And here's the thing about millennials. They're looking pretty grown up these days. People are becoming parents, owning homes, getting married, earning money. And we talked about Beyonce. Look at her. This was Beyonce, Justin Timberlake, Britney Spears. Now look at these folks, right? These are even dated pictures. They're all having kids, going to school, growing up. It happens. It happens. We get older, the march of time, but still our life experience impacts us. So which generations do we have in the workplace? Of course, this kid in the corner with the red glasses, I hope he's not working. I know he's working. But the woman next to him, you know, she could still be working, especially given the economic bumps in the past 10 to 15 years. Right? I was a workforce professional. I ran the America's Job Center in San Luis Obispo County during the recession, 2009 to 2013. And we had a woman come in and she was dressed, I'm not kidding you, in Chanel. She was from Spain. Very, very elegant woman, sophisticated looking woman. Her hair was beautiful. She was in a program for older workers and she was homeless. You know, the legal definition of homelessness is, you know, if you're couch surfing, and that's what she was doing. She was living from friend to friend. Her husband had died a few years back and they had a lot of money and she really had some bad investments and lost everything. And she was in her late 70s. She was 78 years old, right? And she was never had worked and trying to get a job. You know, I know that you guys on the line as workforce professionals, you see this kind of thing. Right? Her story ends actually happily. Her son from Spain came and took her back to Spain because he was worried and wanted to ensure that she was doing well. You know, I had another person, one of my absolute very best person who worked for me. She was the best workshop facilitator. And she was excellent with the participants. Her work was error-free. She was the best person on our very complicated database that we had to put all of this information into CalJobs. And those of you that might have been in CalJobs, work in CalJobs, you know, the side of it that is for workforce investment work is very complicated. And Beverly was the primo top one. In fact, she used to be the one that I would have train new staff members. And I had an opportunity to open a new workforce site. And I went out and, you know, asked for a supervisor, a manager for the site. And I was hoping that Beverly would apply. And she did. And we went through the interview process. And of course, she got it. I was so excited. Beverly's going to be the manager of the new One Stop. And I had to take it to my boss. to get it approved. And he said, well, you can't have Beverly. I said, why not? Well, she's 75 years old and she walks with a cane. And I said, are you kidding me? That's discrimination. She is the best person I have for this position. She trains everybody on the system. Everybody loves her, follows her. She writes the workshop for everybody else. She's the perfect leader. She could do my job. I'm hiring Beverly in that role, and I did. And, you know, she worked there longer than I did. She just recently retired like the last year, and she's fantastic, right? And she was 75 years old at that time. We're still in touch. I love Beverly, best person I ever hired. So there are a lot of people in the workplace. We have different needs at different times in our life. And working, actually, Beverly just loved to work. So we're going to see a lot of different people in the workplace. This is what we currently have, right? So you can start to look at that. And this surprises some people. So the traditional generation, yes, there are not so many. Baby boomers, guess what? Not the largest group. The millennials have surpassed the baby boomers. And this is actually, this is a few months old, but that Gen X group is growing and growing and growing. My daughter graduated from college about a year ago, and she just got her first full-time job. So she's entering the workforce. We're seeing more and more millennials and Gen Zs in the workplace. Now, this is a little bit dated, but the reason why I bring it in is you see, then they have different names here, right? But the builders, the boomers, the Gen X, the Gen Y, Gen Z, Gen X is the millennials. But you see that? Gen Alpha. I don't know if that's what they're going to call them. But my point is about that march in time, right? There's another group that's going to be coming in. So this ability to be aware of this is really important because you will likely come across people who will challenge your perspective and to bring new ideas. And frankly, in the workplace, if we are really to create better solutions, which we need better solutions, right? We need different perspectives, and all generations can help with that. So we need to remember that across generations, there is as much to learn as there is to teach. And this learning and teaching goes both ways, right? I know I have a lot to learn from the younger generations, but I also feel like I have a lot to teach. So we need to keep this open-minded perspective. So I'm going to go through sort of what the research says about the 5 main generations in the workplace, and then I'll nuance it a little bit. So the first thing, let's define the 5 generations in the workplace. We've got the traditionalists that are born prior to 1945, the boomers from 1946 to 1964, Gen X, which are born from 65 to 80, the millennials from 81 to 96, and the Gen Zs, which are 97 to 2012. So find yourself on this. As I told you, and I will tell you my story too, I'm going to tell you what the research says in general. We're talking about generalities, and then we'll nuance it a little bit. So I want to start by talking about communication across these generations. Communication is the foundation of all interpersonal interaction. Communication, of course, is not just words, but it's also your body language, the tone, the setting. This is not a course in communication, but there's a lot to it. I want to start by showing you some communication patterns across generations, and you'll see how these are different and how they might impact how we are effective at getting our message across. So for me, communication is achieving mutual understanding. That means there's someone sending a message to a receiver and there's mutual understanding. Now that message can be sent in a lot of different ways, as we will see, and that really plays into communication across generations. So take a look at this. Now, the traditional, it's much more formal. They want face-to-face. They want to have their experience taken into consideration, and they don't want to multitask. Boomers, they prefer face-to-face to develop the relationship, although they'll use technology. They are optimists, you know, what's possible, but they want you to get to the point. They're busy. They got a lot going on. And actually, they love it if you recognize that they're busy. And then they're really team oriented. So they want to know, how is whatever we're going to do going to impact everybody else? Gen X, they just want it straight, right? They can see BS coming at them. They don't like it. They want straight talk. They think that the best surprise is no surprise. They just lay it out. It says be information. I think, I'm sorry, that was a spell check error. Be informal. So as we move from traditionalists to Gen X, it gets more informal. And don't contact Gen X people off hours. They're very good at the boundaries between their work life and their personal life. So don't be contacting them after hours. Boomers will probably work 24/7. In fact, the boomers are the ones who really, the first time that we started to see, you know, workaholism was in the baby boomers, but the Gen X said, no, we don't want that anymore. I'm working or I'm not working. Millennials, they like short bites of information, right? They love technology and they're going to eat it up, but their attention span is going to be for short bits of information. You want to be very concise, precise. Don't make assumptions. Be very clear and exact with our millennials. The Gen Z, use an app, right? And it's so funny because my son is in college and he's got some friends who are just starting their LinkedIn profiles, and they thought it would be fun to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm getting these messages from these, you know, 20-year-old kids like every day. Hi, Mrs. Markov, how it's so cute. But this is really how people interact a lot. And know that, let's say you are a boomer and you're supervising Gen Z, you could get messages through LinkedIn, through Facebook, through texting, through, I don't know, they're going to make a TikTok video for you and say, hey, boss, I'm doing great, or I'm sick today. I don't know. I remember the first time I got a text from one of my staff members that said they were going to be sick, you know, out for the day because they weren't feeling well. I didn't like that at all. But then I realized real quickly that I could not be a stickler on that. I had to go with it. But the Gen Zs, you're going to get all kinds of communication from them. And they want you to respond quickly to them and to be as personal as you can. The other thing about the Gen Zs is that they're leaning a little bit more towards formality, which is really interesting, right? And they are more appreciative of putting the phones down than, say, the millennials. So really interesting. So the point is that there are very many different ways to communicate across generations. And we need to be aware of that. Remember, I'm trying to build your perspective on this. Okay, so let's break each down a little bit more specifically. Let's talk starting with the greatest generation, right? The traditionalists. These were born prior to 1945. So they may even have a connection or a memory or recollection of World War II. There's a small part of our workforce, but you know, it's interesting to me when I go to a fast food place, when I go to any kind of front-facing customer service position. I just came from a vacation at the national parks. A lot of the greeters, you see a lot of traditionalists in those roles, right? And one of the things that they seek are job security. They are about, what motivates them is to have a feeling of accomplishment, a feeling of control, and to have a sense of responsibility. So let's look at our boomers. And for me, this picture, right, Woodstock, 3 days of peace and music in 1969, right, that is a sea of to-be boomers or boomers. So 25% of the workforce is still boomers, and they are optimistic. They thought all the possibilities are there. They believe that hard work and education equals success. So this is how we kind of define the boomers. They're motivated by money, by recognition. They want to have control, and they love getting promoted. So one of the things I want you to start to see, do you see some commonalities? I see recognition is very important to baby boomers, as it was for the traditionalists, and some control. So start to see some commonalities. Let's look at the Gen X's. So this is 33% of the workforce. They're self-reliant. They are really into building their resume and being able to take those skills from one job to the next. So transferable skills are really important to the Gen X. They love a bonus, recognition. Look, bingo, it's there again. They want to set goals for themselves and meet them. They love to be mentored, and they love training, right? This is part of this, building their set of skills so they can move up and on. Here we go, the millennials. This is the largest group in the workplace right now, and they are tech savvy, and they love to multitask. Now, that either made somebody's heart sing or made you guys freak out, right? Multitasking. I do multitasking very reluctantly. I can do it, but it exhausts me. But millennials is just what they do. They love to multitask. They think that is great. So here's what really motivates them: mentoring. One of the things, and that has come out of the pandemic, there's been a lot of research about whether or not people, let's say there's a workplace and they have been able to function without being everyone in the office. I have a lot of clients, and the SHRM, that's a Society for Human Resource Management, the Gallup data all back up what my clients are seeing through these surveys. And the surveys go something like this: do you want to keep working remotely, or do you want to come back to the office? And consistently, people who are like Gen X, boomers, they like to stay home. But the millennials and the Gen Zs, they want to come back in the office because they feel like they've missed out on opportunities for mentoring and connection, and to be able to learn from people that have been there, and connection to face-to-face connection with people, which I find very interesting. As tech savvy as they are, the younger generations are wanting to get back in the office. As much as the older generations complain about tech, they love to be able to work from home. So interesting. But I think it's reflected in this idea of mentoring. And this is really important. If you work with a millennial and you have an opportunity to provide some mentoring to them, some recognition, this is great. So the millennials love their time off. They too love training, and they like to meet personal objectives. So you start to see there's a little overflow with the Gen Zs, the Gen Xs. One thing, this idea of training is really important to millennials, more so even than the Gen the ones before, the Gen X's. So what does that mean? Gallup research states that a millennial will leave a job for a lower paying job if they believe that the new employer is going to provide them with training opportunities, professional development opportunities. This is really something, particularly for small employers in our Central Coast communities who don't have large budgets to provide training. I have clients who have lost millennials to, again, a lower paying job because the new employer can provide them with professional development opportunities that the previous employer honestly probably didn't even think was important. So I see my clients shifting a little bit of their resources to ensure that there's some training. Good news for me, but it is an important thing to be aware of, whereas previous generations would stick with a higher paying job. Gen Z, 5% of the workforce and growing. You know, they're entrepreneurial. Their minds just think a little bit differently in terms of taking advantage of opportunities to market, to network, and to have more than one job, right? Have maybe a bread and butter job and then some things on the side, some gigs on the side. They're always thinking about how can I monetize whatever I'm doing. They have work-life integration in a way that really redefines that. Whereas we've seen some of the other generations really making that separation, this is work-life integration. This can be challenging in an hourly position where, you know, the employer is saying you can only work 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, and your Gen Zs are going home at night and they're entrepreneurial and they're coming up with ideas and they're writing plans and they're sending them to you and you're thinking, you're supposed to not be working, right? So this work-life integration is really important. So what do Gen Zs get motivated by? I mentioned this before, professional development. They are motivated by salary. And this last point is really important. It's the ethics of any activity. And I can tell you from interacting with so many of my clients, today I do a training program, a large training program for USAID, and we had a Gen Z new employee asking a lot of questions about the ethics of the approach and the policies and procedures, which really stumped the baby boomer training team because it wasn't something we thought about. It was kind of like, hey, you're working for the US government. This is the way we do it, right? But the ethics of something is really important. Now, I've had Gen Z employees really demand certain types of training, say around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And those are great things. And from organizations that may not have the resources to bring in the kind of things that they want in terms of training. But, you know, this is, I think, a great thing. They're pushing the envelope. These are old souls and young bodies. And I think that ethical element of what they're bringing is really important. In some ways, some of the researchers have said that the Gen Zs are more like their grandparents than their parents. They have had many formative events that have shaped their view of the future. You know, I talked to my son sometime, you know, close to the end here a couple of months ago of the pandemic and said, well, when it's all over, what are you excited about? And you're going to graduate from college and what do you want to do? And he was like, Mom, it's just not that way anymore. You know, things are not as easy anymore. And I felt so sad, but that was his perspective, right? I know when I was ending my college career, I wanted to join the Peace Corps and travel the world. And he feels like that's not really possible, particularly because of COVID. And it's something that, of course, as his mom, makes me sad. And I talk to him a lot about it. But it is an important piece that I think these younger generations, again, are more like Depression era, you know, our Depression era ancestors, and that they've had many big events that have shaped their view of the future and where they fit in the world. So it's something to keep in mind. So let's look at giving and receiving feedback. And again, I want you to look at the differences, but also the similarities. So traditionalists, no news is good news. You're not giving me feedback. I'm just doing my thing. I'm okay. Boomers, hey, they want that written performance review once a year. That's it. That's enough. But I want it documented. The Gen X's, they're likely to ask you for it. You know, how am I doing? They want to hear from you, probably on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be as formal as, say, the boomers want it. The millennials, you know, they want it at a push of a button. And there's so many apps, you know, workforce applications now where managers are expected to put in on a regular basis, you know, weekly, daily basis, some type of kudos, feedback, pluses and minuses on a regular basis. And in the middle of the night, your millennial staff member can go and say, hey, how'd I do on that meeting? And get that feedback right away. This is what they want. This is difficult. You can see maybe how it could be different. You've got a baby boomer supervisor and a millennial worker, right? When does a baby boomer want to get it and probably give it? Once a year. When does a millennial want it? All the time, in the middle of the night, in a nap. So there are some differences. This is why we talk about this. Gen Zs, let's look at this. They want it in person. They crave a more high-touch interaction, where the millennials are more willing just to do it all virtually. So the point is that there really are many different ways to give and receive feedback. And we need to learn not only to be flexible, but also to be appreciative of what people need. People get motivated when they feel like their needs are being met by whoever they're working with. So this is important to keep in mind. Here are some actions to take with the traditionalist. You want to interact with them, talk with them, listen to stories, share life experiences. Provide clear and written goals. Show respect for that experience, right? Don't poo-poo it. They have a lot to offer. The baby boomers, show that you care. Give frequent recognition. Coach, don't direct. Get into that coaching relationship. The Gen Zs, X's, excuse me, I keep saying that. The Gen X's, they want to have fun. They want to work in teams. And again, we've talked about this, a separation of work and personal life. Millennials, it's all about technology. Hey, they are the multitaskers. Give them opportunities to multitask. But remember, right, that they may need some people skill training and some close supervision. You can't just let people go. They need that connection and guidance in terms of that. And with the Gen Zs, demonstrate respect, be authentic, very important, and act with integrity. They're going to call you on the things that they think you're not being walking the talk on. So that's important. So here are a couple of things to know, okay? First is that this idea of generations, it really is an American phenomena. It's based in the US. Other cultures, some other cultures, this makes no sense. This doesn't mean anything. But this is really what I've shared with you is based more of a US. It's only one piece of the puzzle. Right, there are other things to consider: working types, cultural background, personalities, birth order. I mean, there's a lot of aspects to diversity, but this is a big one. And if we're trying to learn how to interact with people, I always say this: you try it, and it either works or doesn't work. If it doesn't work, you try something else. But you're having a challenging relationship with someone, maybe it's the generational perspective, and you can start to look at and start to think about some of these things. And then this is where the nuance comes in. There's this idea of a cusper. And so it's really important to consider this. A cusper, or sometimes people call them micro generations. This is someone who was born at the end or the beginning of a generation and might not really fit into that typical thing. So the cusper might identify with some aspects of the generation before or after them. Again, it's just one piece of the puzzle, but it can be important. Now, I do want to go into a little bit more detail about the cusper, because actually I am a cusper, right? I am born in 1963, and I feel like the baby boomers maybe were like older brothers and sisters. But I'm a little bit more like a Gen X. So let's look at this a little bit, okay? Here's the cuspers, or the micro generations. These are built on the generational profiles of people in the middle, rather than generational profiles are built on the middle, the average, the general. But then there are people that are on the edges, as I said, and they overlap by 5 to 8 years. So you could be identifying with more than one generation. The person born, again, near the end or the beginning, they have mixed characteristics, and we can even name those. So this is important because some people don't feel a sense of belonging to a specific generation, and cuspers can sometimes feel like they don't have a part in this conversation. I'll tell you that really until I started teaching this class, that's kind of how I felt. They shared values from each generation. They're sandwiched in between. They may have even more understanding of the different generations. So they have a real place in this conversation. The goal is to support everyone, so everyone feels like they can belong and bring their best to work. Sometimes these cuspers are the glue between the generations. And there was research by a guy named Scott Zimmer at the Bridgeworks that shows that cuspers are the strongest mediators and are often able to help mediate the generational clashes from the perspective of both generations in ways that others are not able to do it. So they can serve as a translator, the peacemaker, the troubleshooter. They can be like the generational liaison and be really invaluable. So the idea is not to label anybody, but to really identify these differences as a way to get another piece of the puzzle, understand people. So the question is, where do you fit in? I mean, I honestly, until I did the research on microgenerations and the cuspers, I never had heard the term Generation Jones. But certainly that is, I feel much more comfortable fitting in there than I do, say, being a boomer or being Gen X. So it doesn't matter as much the label, but just to see these patterns and to have some action items of what to do. Because, we're all like onions. And this is just one more layer of understanding how people interact effectively with one another. Our goal is that everyone feels like they can be engaged at work. This is based on Gallup research, and people want to feel understood. They want to feel like what they're doing is meaningful and that they play a role in it. They want to feel like we can actually do this. It is really possible. And that, they're not acting in a vacuum, that people care about them, and that there's a sense of camaraderie. We're all in this together. One of the most important things is, this is a quote that I often share in my workshops, is that people will eventually forget what you did and will eventually forget what you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel. And really being able to understand the differences of generations and accommodate that is a way to make people feel like they belong, like they have a place, like they're important. And this is very engaging. I talked about this in a couple of classes, but I do want to bring this up. This MEET methodology, it's a very simple acronym, but it is important. Make time to meet and explore differences. Respect one another, encourage respect across people. Say, we may not agree on this, let's agree to disagree, but can we, shake hands and respect that you have a different perspective than me, and take personal responsibility. I know that there are ways in which my behavior, my language, my perspective is dated to some people. And, talking about Gilligan's Island, I mean, that's a silly example, but that's true. So then where's my place in what do I have to offer? I take personal responsibility. We all have something very valuable to offer. And what's the best way to deliver it? That's taking personal responsibility. So be curious about other people and what makes them tick. I know that's easier said than done, but to be a good partner at work, and to keep your job and to get promoted, I think that learning about different generations is really important as well. So how do we work across generations? How do we work well with others? First, use complementary strengths. right? So I think I bring a lot of experience to the table, but I need to keep an open mind with learning about new technologies and new ways of doing things. Find a common purpose. Right? What brings us all together to do things? Be fair. Be fair in evaluating others, but evaluating yourself, and be fair to everybody. Trust and be trustworthy. Act with integrity. Do what you say you're going to do. Walk the talk. Accept other people's faults. Right? Not everybody is perfect, and maybe this reliance on technology or the insistence on meeting face-to-face. Maybe there are other ways to do things. Accept each other's faults and perspectives. Be forgiving with one another. Don't be selfish or competitive. Work to get to mutual understanding always. And again, I'll kind of stop where I started, which is that the foundation of all this is really good communication. And we've effectively communicated when we get to mutual understanding. Mutual understanding does not mean that we agree with everything, but we understand one another and the message that's trying to be communicated in the same way. When we get to that point, often what happens is we can transform whatever we're doing to something better because we both understand it, and we can bring our diverse perspectives from our generational perspective, our working type, our race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation. This is all part of getting to better solutions by being able to appreciate the differences and getting to mutual understanding. So some of this work that I was sharing with you today from multiple sources, I use Gallup data a lot, but these in particular, these points were from a book called The Power of Two. And it talks about the importance of finding partners at work and how to be a good partner at work. So these are how we partner with people that have a different generation than us. So with that, I will entertain any questions or comments. Anything you want to add? Did you learn something? Anything? I see your faces over there.
When you asked about the Minnows tour, I was trying to think what singing group is the Minnows.
Yeah, no, it was a 3-hour tour, right? Gilligan's Island. That's so funny. Yeah. Well, and that's interesting too. I mean, where are the commonalities that different generations have? How do they bond with one another? Because it's certainly happening, but it may be different. Whereas I know for me and my generation, it really was about television and music. Everybody knew certain songs and TV shows. Now, not so much, but they're bonding on other things. What else?
If I may, I'll chime in here. I was
Hi.
kind of expecting the topic of cell phones to come up because I noticed for me, that's been one of the biggest generational issues. I'm glued to my cell phone. I mean, I work on it. I'm on it right now for my Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
But when I have somebody assigned to me during business hours to be mentored by me, and I turn around to see if they can see what I'm pointing to on the screen, and they are staring at their phone.
Yeah.
And during a conversation, you think you're talking to somebody and you're looking, and they're actually looking down onto their lap or their phone. And to me, that's a generational difference.
It is.
And I don't know how to address it, because I think we're just going to have to learn to live with it, because how do you change a whole young generation's habits?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I didn't say that specifically, but when we were talking about the multitasking, and reliance on technology, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So people being in meetings on their phone, watching a presentation all at the same time, that's this ability to multitask. And it can be challenging on both sides, right? So people like me who would rather have more eye contact might have a problem with that. But then if you try to say, don't do it, then how is that interrupting people's ability to focus? I don't know. But that's some, a point of conversation. This is where I would say in teams like that, set some norms. I mean, you might be surprised. I've had groups that brought that up. Groups brought it up, and then they develop a norm about it. Like, we are not on our cell phone when we're in a meeting. I mean, sometimes it's bad habits, but I've had good success where I have an open conversation and I'm not telling them don't be on your phone, but I get the group to talk about how do they want people to show up, and then get them all to agree to that.
Yeah.
And you might be surprised what comes up, but that's a very typical kind of multitasking thing that we see.
Yeah. Not an issue anymore because I'm teleworking. So I'm stuck on my phone all the time, but that's something I really noticed that I definitely thought it was an intergenerational thing.
Yeah.
My spouse is 20 years or almost 20 years older than I am. So I'm quite familiar with the great generation. And I'm a boomer myself, but most of my friends are quite a bit younger than me. So I see a lot of what you talk about in all those worlds. You're very right. It's quite accurate of description for the different generations.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, and there'll be more people coming up too. Janie, you look like you wanted to say something.
Oh, no, I already did about the minnows.
About the minnows.
I don't know. I only got 4 right.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I wouldn't have gotten
Oh no,
right if
I'm
I
proud
didn't
that
make
I
it
didn't
up.
watch Friends. I don't care.
Yeah. Well, anything else? It's always so fun. I see some familiar names on this, and I love doing this work for the Santa Barbara Workforce Development Board and America's Job Center in Santa Barbara County. Keep in contact. There's a survey that they'd like you to take, which is tell us what you think of the webinar. And this is a Survey Monkey. I believe that you can click on it. It's live. Let's see. I know I can. That's a good thing. You know what? I'll put it in the chat, and you can go ahead and there we go. Fill that out. I know that Peter and Luis and all the gang over there will really love to get some feedback. There have been a lot of these workshops, and I hope that you enjoy them and they're helpful, and we'd love to hear any other topics you want to hear. So anything else for today? I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you.